Imagine waking up 40,000 years ago, on a freezing morning, while cold wind sweeps across the landscape and frost covers the ground around your camp. You have no winter jacket, no insulated boots, no wool sweater, and not even the kind of basic clothing most people would consider essential today. The temperature is low enough to make a modern person search desperately for warmth, yet your ancestors must spend the entire day outdoors. They need to find food, protect their families, and survive another night in an unforgiving environment. At first glance, this seems almost impossible, because humans are not covered in thick fur like bears, wolves, or many other cold weather animals. Compared with creatures specifically adapted for freezing climates, the human body appears surprisingly vulnerable. So how did ancient humans survive before clothing became common? How did they endure icy winds, cold rain, and long winters without the protection we depend on every day? The answer is far more fascinating than most people realize. Ancient humans did not survive because of a single invention that suddenly solved the problem. They survived because they developed a collection of strategies that worked together remarkably well. Some of those strategies came from the human body itself. Others came from a deep understanding of the environment. Still others depended on cooperation and the ability to share resources within a community. For hundreds of thousands of years, these methods allowed people to stay alive in conditions that would challenge many modern humans. In fact, one of the biggest misconceptions about prehistoric life is the belief that clothing was always the primary defense against the cold. For much of human history, other forms of protection may have been just as important, and sometimes even more important. Long before tailored garments existed, humans were already finding ways to reduce heat loss, conserve energy, and survive harsh weather. They learned to use every advantage available to them. The story of staying warm before clothing is therefore not really a story about fashion or technology. It is a story about adaptation. It is a story about how an unusually intelligent and cooperative species managed to overcome one of nature's most dangerous challenges. And it all begins with the oldest heating system humans have ever possessed: their own body. The first defense ancient humans had against the cold was not clothing, shelter, or any special technology. It was the human body itself. Every human body constantly produces heat because staying alive requires energy, and that energy naturally generates warmth as a byproduct. Even while resting, your organs, muscles, and cells are working continuously to maintain a stable internal temperature. When people become active, heat production increases dramatically. Walking long distances, climbing hills, carrying supplies, gathering food, and tracking animals all force muscles to work harder and release additional heat. Ancient humans rarely spent their days sitting still, because survival demanded almost constant movement. From sunrise until sunset, they were usually walking, searching, carrying, digging, climbing, or hunting. This lifestyle transformed the body into a remarkably effective heat-producing machine. Anyone who has taken a brisk walk on a cold morning knows how quickly movement can make freezing air feel more manageable. For our ancestors, this was not exercise. It was simply daily life. The body also contains automatic defense systems designed specifically to combat cold temperatures. When the environment becomes colder, blood vessels near the skin can narrow, reducing the amount of heat escaping into the surrounding air. This allows the body to conserve warmth around vital organs where it matters most. If temperatures continue to fall, muscles begin to contract rapidly in a process we call shivering. Although shivering feels uncomfortable, it is actually the body's emergency heating system. By creating thousands of tiny muscle contractions, the body generates additional warmth without requiring conscious effort. Ancient humans relied on these biological responses long before they understood the science behind them. Their bodies were constantly adapting to changing environmental conditions. Unlike many modern people who spend most of their lives inside climate-controlled buildings, ancient humans experienced the natural world directly every day. They lived through cold mornings, warm afternoons, strong winds, heavy rain, and seasonal shifts that continuously challenged their ability to regulate temperature. Over time, this exposure may have improved their tolerance to colder conditions. Researchers studying traditional populations have found that regular exposure to cool environments can increase the body's ability to adapt and respond efficiently to temperature changes. This does not mean ancient humans were immune to cold. Freezing temperatures remain dangerous and could easily become deadly under the wrong circumstances. However, their bodies were likely better conditioned to handle environmental stress than those of many modern people. Body fat also played an important role because it stored energy and created a layer of insulation that slowed heat loss. Individuals with greater energy reserves often had a better chance of surviving harsh winters and periods of food scarcity. Together, movement, metabolism, circulation, shivering, and adaptation formed a powerful biological defense against the cold. But even the most capable human body has limits. When temperatures dropped far enough, survival depended on something beyond biology alone. That is why ancient humans learned to use one of the most valuable resources in their environment: the landscape itself. Before clothing became common, shelter may have been more important than anything people could place on their bodies. A person exposed directly to freezing wind loses heat far more quickly than someone protected from the elements, even if neither person is wearing much insulation. Ancient humans understood this through experience, and that knowledge became one of their most valuable survival tools. One of the simplest ways to stay warm was finding the right place to rest. A cave could provide enormous advantages because it blocked wind, reduced exposure to rain and snow, and often maintained temperatures that were more stable than the open landscape. Even a small reduction in exposure could dramatically improve a person's chances of surviving a cold night. Not every group lived near caves, so ancient humans learned to take advantage of other natural features as well. Rock overhangs provided protection from precipitation, while dense forests helped reduce the force of cold winds sweeping across the terrain. Valleys, hillsides, and natural depressions sometimes created pockets of warmer air that offered better sleeping conditions than exposed ground. Choosing the wrong campsite could increase heat loss throughout the night and place an entire group at risk. Choosing the right campsite could conserve warmth, improve sleep, and increase the likelihood of surviving until morning. This knowledge was passed down through generations because understanding the landscape was often a matter of life and death. Ancient humans did not move randomly through their environment, but learned where cold air collected, where storms hit hardest, and where natural protection could be found. The landscape itself became part of their survival strategy. Even simple structures could make a remarkable difference. Archaeological evidence suggests that some groups built basic windbreaks using branches, vegetation, animal bones, and whatever materials were available nearby. These shelters were far from modern houses, but they reduced exposure enough to help preserve precious body heat. The goal was not to create perfect comfort. The goal was simply to lose heat more slowly than the environment could take it away. Many animals use similar strategies today by seeking dens, nests, burrows, and sheltered locations during periods of harsh weather. Ancient humans were exceptionally skilled at observing these patterns and applying the same principles to their own survival. In some ways, the environment itself became a giant natural blanket that could either protect a person or expose them to danger. This may explain why archaeologists often find evidence of repeated occupation at the same sites over thousands of years. Certain locations consistently provided advantages that made survival easier and more reliable. Yet even the best shelter could not completely eliminate the cold. Temperatures could still drop dangerously low, especially during winter nights, when the body naturally loses heat while sleeping. That is why ancient humans relied on another powerful source of warmth that required no tools, no technology, and no special materials. They relied on each other. One of the greatest advantages ancient humans possessed was something no shelter, blanket, or animal hide could fully replace. They had each other. For most of human history, people rarely slept alone, because survival was easier when individuals remained close together. A single person resting in the cold loses heat rapidly, but a group resting together creates a shared reservoir of warmth. Anyone who has entered a crowded room on a cold day has experienced a small version of this effect. Every human body continuously releases heat into the surrounding environment. When several people sleep near one another, that heat accumulates instead of disappearing into the cold air. Families likely slept close together. Children remained near parents, and entire groups often rested within relatively confined spaces. This arrangement offered social benefits, but it also provided a significant thermal advantage. Infants benefited especially from shared body heat because small bodies lose warmth much faster than larger ones. Keeping children close was not only comforting and protective, it may have been essential for survival during cold nights. Adults also gained protection from sleeping in groups because a cluster of people could conserve far more heat than isolated individuals spread across an open area. This may help explain why communal sleeping appears repeatedly throughout human history and across many different cultures. The practice reduced vulnerability to predators, strengthened social bonds, and helped preserve warmth when temperatures dropped. In many ways, community itself became a survival technology. Unlike animals that relied on thick fur, humans relied heavily on cooperation. A group could accomplish things that no individual could achieve alone. That principle applied to hunting, gathering, childcare, defense, and protection from harsh weather. Researchers studying traditional hunter-gatherer societies have found that cooperation often plays a crucial role in surviving difficult environmental conditions. Resources are shared, responsibilities are divided, and risks are spread across the group rather than carried by a single person. Warmth became another resource that could be shared. The importance of this strategy becomes even clearer when considering that early humans did not always possess sophisticated shelters or advanced clothing. Body heat was one of the most reliable resources available because it could not be lost, broken, or forgotten. As long as the group remained together, warmth remained available. This may be one reason social bonds became so important throughout human evolution. People who cooperated effectively often had a better chance of surviving environmental challenges than those who attempted to face them alone. The cold, therefore, shaped more than survival strategies. It may have strengthened the cooperative behaviors that eventually helped humans become one of the most successful species on Earth. Yet sleeping together was only part of the solution. Long before tailored clothing existed, ancient humans were already experimenting with natural materials that could trap heat and provide surprisingly effective insulation. Before humans developed tailored clothing, they were already discovering that nature itself could provide materials capable of trapping heat and improving survival. The earliest coverings were probably simple rather than sophisticated, requiring little technology and almost no specialized tools to create. Animal hides may have been draped over the shoulders, wrapped around the body, or used as blankets during sleep, long before people learned how to sew fitted garments. Even a loose covering could reduce heat loss by creating a barrier between the skin and the cold air. The effectiveness of these early solutions did not depend on perfect design. It depended on gaining even a small advantage over the environment. Plant materials may have served a similar purpose in certain regions. Leaves, grasses, bark fibers, and other natural materials could be gathered quickly and arranged to provide temporary insulation during cold weather. These materials were far less effective than modern clothing, but survival often depends on many small improvements working together. Researchers believe bedding may have become important before fully developed clothing, because people spend a large portion of their lives sleeping. During sleep, body temperature naturally declines, making nighttime one of the most dangerous periods for heat loss. Animal skins placed beneath the body could reduce contact with cold ground, while additional hides placed on top help trap warmth throughout the night. The difference between sleeping directly on frozen soil and sleeping on insulated materials could be enormous. Ancient humans likely experimented constantly with whatever resources were available in their local environment. Groups living in forests had access to different materials than those living on grasslands, mountains, or coastal regions. Over thousands of generations, people accumulated knowledge about which materials retained warmth, resisted moisture, and remained useful for the longest periods of time. This information became part of the survival knowledge passed from parents to children and from elders to younger members of the group. The transition from simple coverings to true clothing was probably gradual rather than sudden. A hide used as a blanket could later become a wrap, and a wrap could eventually be secured more effectively around the body. Over many generations, these small improvements accumulated into increasingly sophisticated methods of controlling heat loss. Warmth was not achieved through a single invention. It emerged through countless experiments, observations, and adaptations repeated over thousands of years. By the time tailored clothing became common, humans had already spent generations learning how to use nature itself as insulation. The story of staying warm before clothing is therefore not really the story of one technology. It is the story of a species that continually adapted to challenges by combining intelligence, cooperation, and creativity. And that leads to the most important lesson of all. The greatest protection ancient humans had against the cold was never a particular material or invention. It was their extraordinary ability to adapt. When people think about staying warm, they usually think about coats, blankets, insulated houses, and modern heating systems. That perspective makes it easy to assume that ancient humans must have been helpless before clothing became common. But the evidence suggests something very different. Our ancestors survived because they approached the problem of cold from many directions at once. Their bodies generated heat through constant movement and biological adaptations. Their knowledge of the landscape helped them find shelter that reduced exposure to wind, rain, and freezing temperatures. Their communities shared warmth through cooperation, close sleeping arrangements, and mutual support during difficult conditions. Their use of natural materials provided insulation long before sophisticated garments existed. Each strategy solved only part of the problem. Together, they formed a remarkably effective survival system. This ability to combine multiple solutions may be one of the defining characteristics of our species. Many animals survive harsh environments because evolution equipped them with specialized physical features. Humans survived because they learned how to adapt. Instead of growing thicker fur, they developed better knowledge. Instead of relying entirely on biology, they relied on cooperation. Instead of waiting for evolution to solve every challenge, they created solutions through observation and experience. That flexibility changed the course of human history. Long before cities, agriculture, or civilization existed, humans were already solving complex survival problems using creativity and collective knowledge. The cold was one of the greatest challenges they faced, yet it became another obstacle they learned to overcome. Perhaps the most remarkable part of this story is that clothing itself was never the original solution. Clothing was the result of thousands of years of experimentation, adaptation, and accumulated knowledge. Humans first learned how to survive the cold. Only later did they learn how to master it. The next time you zip up a winter jacket or wrap yourself in a warm blanket, It is worth remembering that your ancestors often faced the same freezing temperatures with far fewer resources. What kept them alive was not a magical invention or a single breakthrough. It was their ability to learn, cooperate, and adapt faster than the challenges around them could defeat them. And in many ways, that ability remains humanity's greatest survival tool today. Long before clothing protected the human body, the human mind was already finding ways to stay warm.